All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Solvang City Council for Monday, February 28th, 2022. I now call the meeting to order at 6:30. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Councilmember Clark.
Still here.
Mayor Pro Tem Infante.
Here.
Councilmember Rooney.
Here.
Councilmember Thomas.
Here.
Mayor Urick.
Here. Councilmember Thomas, would you please lead us in the flag salute?
And if I can ask at the end of the pledge, I would just stand for a moment for the citizens of Afghanistan. Ukraine. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder. All right. Go right into public communications. Madam Clerk, would you please read the admonition?
The council welcomes your input. At this time, you may address the council on items not on the agenda and consent agenda. Time limit is 3 minutes. We will start with in-person public comment first.
All right, and I have one speaker slip. Max Hamburg.
Council, staff, everybody, thank you for this moment. Anyways, I just wanted to bring you up to date on Danish Days. We're going full forward with it, full 3 days. We expect the parade route to go as normal down Mission. We're working with everyone to get that taken care of, the sheriffs and other people. We're gonna have a great time. We're expecting a pretty good crowd this year. They pent up action from all the emails and the traffic on the website and everything. We expect a pretty good showing, so it's a really exciting year this year. We will have 3 Danish maids, something out of tradition since we didn't have 2 last year, the last 2, so we're gonna bring them on, and looks like we'll have 3 Danish maids. So if there's any questions I can answer for any.
Max, would you just state what the dates are so everyone knows that?
16, 17, and 18th of September. Yeah, I had to look it up. I forgot to tell you anyways. So yeah, and axe throwing, and we should have a good representation this year.
And a bigger beer garden, I hear.
Yes, we're going to try to open up the whole parking lot to be able to enjoy beverages while you listen to the bands.
Cool.
Hopefully we can get Charlie up.
I'm going to be the target for the axe throwing, I heard.
Ooh, I'll buy a ticket.
There you go. We can fund a parking lot that way. All right, that's all I have for speaker slips. Is there anyone else wishing to make any comments that are here without a speaker slip? For any items that are not on the agenda, seeing none. Any out in either Zoom or on the telephone wishing to speak on items that are not on the agenda at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back. Move on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'd just like to start by thanking you for a good, robust discussion this last Saturday and setting the goals for us to work on as we continue to develop the financial plan. These are the goals, if we can pull out my slide, that you have developed this last Saturday. I'll go over those really briefly, and then I'll also include these at the next council meeting on your consent agenda, just to make sure that everything is captured exactly how you expected it to be. So the goals are: 1, to enhance local water supply and strive for water independence; to develop additional parking with focus on underground parking; to improve circulation and develop multimodal transportation options; to ensure fiscal sustainability and invest in infrastructure; and to support and diversify tourism while supporting and honoring local organizations serving our community. So once again, this will be in your next consent agenda with all the details and the priorities, the bullet points that you had underneath those, and we'll include that as part of the financial plan development and continue the conversations with you through the preliminary financial plan, which will be coming back for your considerations. Next, we have the process going forward with the general plan update. As you would recall, we had the last community workshop on preferred land use alternatives. Received good feedback from the community, both at the workshop and via survey. The GPAC had met and made recommendations unanimously, which will be going for consideration to the City Council and the Planning Commission at a joint session on March 7th for their consideration and consideration for adoption of a preferred alternative for the land use. The rate study also continues to move forward. At the next council meeting on March 14th, we'll bring forward to you our final recommendations based on the community workshop and all the input that we received. And we would be asking you to review those recommendations and also set a date for the Proposition 218 hearing. The Proposition 218 hearing will be proposed for a time in June, and the rates would be adopted if the council approves them starting on July 1 of 2022. Now, we have been working, speaking of all of the events and what Max just has announced, we have been working on pulling together a comprehensive set of events. Now, these are all the things that are out there in process. They're not all permitted yet, but just to give you kind of a heads up of the busy season coming up as we head into the summertime. The first one will be the March 25 Score Bike Ride. We have the Datsun Roadsters, and I won't read through all of this. May 7 will be the big one with the Wine Country Half Marathon with our Insurance Vistadores. We have an application for Juneteenth event on June 18th, followed by Pierce Aero Society Car Show. We have an application for SYV Pride event. We're also working with Cogden Marble and the TAC on a Lego event sometime in the spring. And of course, then we'll be looking forward to bringing back and working with both of the Rotaries, the Solvang Rotary and the Santa Ynez Valley Rotary, to have the 4th of July fireworks and the parade. And then we'll move into all of the summer events. There will be the music in the park we're expecting, movies in the park. There's a few recreation events going on as well. We'll also work more closely with the library to highlight their events, and of course work with the chamber. The chamber really advertises the small events that local businesses hold on their own. And of course in September, as Max has just mentioned, a comeback of the Danish Days. There's been a couple of years now that we didn't have an opportunity to enjoy those. Will be the September 16th, 17th, and the 18th. Now looking at our advanced calendar, on March 7th we'll have a busy day starting at 5 p.m. time certain with a special city council meeting to review draft maps for elections by district. It will be followed by a joint session with the City Council and the Planning Commission, as I just mentioned, for a preferred land use alternative and your consideration of adoption of that for the general plan. And it will also be followed by the Planning Commission regular meetings, so there will be 3 meetings, kind of one after another that night. And on the Planning Commission agenda that night, we will also have the consideration of preliminary review of the Ed St. George mixed-use old lumberyard project. Now March 14th is going to be a busy day as well, where we have the SB1 project list. That's an annual required report. Solvang Skid Mesa LLMD annual assessment is another required report. The FTA TDA grant agreements, that's our required agreements that we have to file, which is what funds our transit operations. As I mentioned, we'll be coming to you with the utility rate study and ask to set the Prop 218 hearing. We also will be bringing to you recommendations for the special events permitting procedures, recommendations for some improvements this year to the Solvang Park. We've been talking to Planning Commission and DRC specifically about Title 11 ordinance modifications that address how the DRC and PC interact with each other and their roles and responsibilities. The DRC and PC held a joint meeting on February 17th and have unanimously agreed on those recommendations, so those will be coming to you for your final consideration. And then we have also been working with the Planning Commission on Title 11 ordinance modifications for treatment of sheds and the regulations that apply to that. So those recommendations will be coming to the Planning Commission at the March 7th hearing as well. And then will be hopefully available for your first review on March 14th. And then the last item there on March 14th is that we are anticipating a need, because of the state allocation being low again, to need some supplemental water purchase. So we will be coming to you with our estimated budget and estimated purchase requirements to get your authorization. And that concludes my report.
Are there any questions?
Are there any questions of the staff report? I just had a couple of comments. Recreation events coming through, and not only movies in the park, but I was just thinking for the public as a whole, I think we'll have softball leagues, bocce ball, and pickleball going all through. So those are not, it's a special event, but at least getting the word out right now that I think all of those, at least those 3 leagues will all be going through the summertime. So make sure everyone gets your teams together, sign up. Kim, I know you're dying to get out there and bust a kneecap. All right, are there any other last questions or comments? Moving on to council comments at this time. Is there anyone wishing to council have any reports or anything at this time?
The only thing I'd like to do,
Councilman Fonte, go ahead.
thank you. I'd like to address the letter that we got from Dave Jameson with regard to the water rates. The water rate, with the 20% reduction in the penalties for people that don't meet that, he made the comment that, well, the perfect example is January 2 years ago, we had rain, so nobody was sprinkling. This January, we didn't have any rain, so people were sprinkling. So if you're trying to save your trees, you got penalized. And that doesn't seem right. Now, I talked to the city manager, and she's already told me that there's a move afoot to make that more like a 3-month or 4-month or 6-month or an average, to make sure people are saving water, but not penalizing them in certain situations like January versus January a couple of years ago. The other part of that letter that I'd like to make sure we address, I think you said in the upcoming agenda, we're going to be talking about the utility rates. One of the things that was mentioned is we pay, as a citizen here, you pay for the meter, and then you pay for the water. I can't speak for everybody. I haven't done a study. We'd have to ask staff. But I pay probably a third in water of what I pay for in a meter. If what we're trying to do is save water or incentivize people to save water, maybe we should reduce the meter rates and increase the the usage rates. So as part of the rate study, I'd like to propose that we look into that and what it would without severely penalizing anybody. But let's charge people for what they use and not just for the meter. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Any other comments? Committee meetings? I'll take it from here then. Have a few. I don't know if anybody heard, I'm sure everybody has some thought on this, but starting tomorrow, masks will no longer be required for unvaccinated individuals indoors. Starting March 11th, in schools and childcare facilities, masks will not be required but be strongly recommended. However, there still will be a requirement to wear masks for everyone in high transmission settings like public transit, so our SYV transit buses or the express that we use for commuting, all of those will still require that. Emergency shelters, healthcare settings, correctional facilities, homeless shelters, and long-term care facilities such as Atterdag. So just keep in mind that while masks will no longer be required for most places starting tomorrow, and that's actually to correspond with here in California, Oregon, and in Washington. So all 3 states, the governors met, and that was what they basically came up with for the plan starting tomorrow. So it's good news, I think, for everybody. It's nice to see everybody's full faces now. I think I have a fuller face than I did before the strike. All that eating, we get to do it, huh? Other news, the libraries, all the libraries, Goleta, Buellton, Solvang, the branches, all were able to start resuming in-person services as of last Tuesday. And just so everyone knows, the Buellton and Solvang library branch hours right now are Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 5. If you have any questions, you can call the Solvang or Buellton branches, and I'll give you the Solvang branch number, 805-688-4214, if you have any questions for that. But everyone's able to go inside now, so that's good news. One of the events that the library will be holding is this one called Abraham Lincoln, His Stories and Jokes. It's going to be held at Bethania Lutheran Church in the Fireside Room, 603 Atterdag Road. It will be held on Sunday, March 13th at 3 p.m. It's hosted by the Friends of the Library of San Ynez Valley. And John Voll will be performing as Abraham Lincoln, and will share a lot of Lincoln's stories and jokes at this meeting. So you can make reservations at Solvang Library or GoletaValleyLibrary.org. Either one of those, you can make those reservations for that. Moving forward with our food bank numbers, Tuesday, February 15th, there were 181 households served, 696 individuals. First time users was 13. And then last Tuesday, it was down, which was good. We're trending in the right direction. So hopefully that means people are starting to become less dependent on that. Households, 160. Individuals were 696. And first-time users were 13. In addition to that, they are holding a rummage sale on Saturday, March 5th. The sale will run from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Proceeds from this rummage sale will go to purchase foods to stuff the Tuesday bags. There will be drop-off. You can drop off if you wanted to donate items on Thursday, March 3rd from 5:30 to 7:30, or Friday, March 4th from 5:30 to 8, and they are requesting no clothing for this particular one. If anybody wants to volunteer or to help out, you can contact Linda Marzullo at 805-688-5219 or at vikingpressprint@verizon.net. That's again they're calling it a stuff sale, March 5 from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Bethania Parish Hall. And I think those are my final comments, except on a personal note, just to wish my brother a happy birthday today. My younger brother.
Mr. Mayor,
My younger brother Brian.
when you said if you're going to drop off goods at Bethania, they suggest no clothing.
Yes, no clothing is optional. It's a drive-through only.
Wow, no clothing, okay. That's a progressive church.
Thank you for catching that, Robert. I appreciate that. All right, those are final comments that I have. Moving on to the consent agenda, Madam Clerk, would you please read items on the consent agenda?
The consent agenda is designed for routine administrative city matters and is approved by roll call vote with one motion. These items are discussed only upon the request of council members. Members of the public were afforded an opportunity to speak on consent agenda items during the public communications portion of this agenda. Item 4A, approve order of agenda as presented. Item 4B, approve minutes of the City Council meeting of February 14th, 2022. 4C, adopt resolution number 22-1158, notice of intention to comply with SB 619. Item 4D, continue the public hearing regarding amendments to the municipal code regarding sheds and other accessory structures to March 14th, 2022. 4E, continue the public hearing regarding amendments to the municipal code regarding boards and commissions to March 14th, 2022. 4F, receive and file an update on branding strategy and visitor center remodel work product. 4G, approve the contract information update contact information update for Bank of America commercial credit account.
All right, thank you. At this time, is there any council members that wish to pull any items? Any questions or?
Thank you.
I guess I just have one question on 4G, which is the contact information. Would it be helpful to have a third person instead of just you two?
I don't
noticed there
think
was
it's
3
very
before.
necessary. I mean, it's just a credit card for the city. And it's, unfortunately, right now, for us to make any changes, they require us to go through this formal process and
Right.
have you all sign for an authorized person to make any changes.
Sounds good, thank you. So if there's no questions, is there any, let's see, we don't need to
Need a motion?
make a motion to accept the council agenda?
I'll move that we accept the consent agenda.
And is there a
I'll
second?
second it.
Can I have a motion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Infante,
Yes.
Councilmember Verona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Hurek.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, moving on to public hearings. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 5?
Public hearing.
Item number 5 is adopt resolution 22-1159, a resolution to adopt a Measure A 5-year local program of projects for fiscal years 2023-2027. It's a required annual item that we have to present to the council, and our Public Works Director, Roger Olds, is going to present.
Thank you, Zena. Oh,
It's catching.
do we have the PowerPoint? There we go. So this is the Measure A program projects. The staff recommends that we got to hold a public hearing. If you want to give us any additional direction or information, do that once we conclude the staff report, and then afterwards adopt a resolution approving the 5-year program of projects for fiscal years 2023 through 2027. Next slide. So Measure A is a 1/2 of 1% sales tax for the county of Santa Barbara, and it was passed by the voters in 2008, went into effect 2010, and part of the requirement is that we have an annual program of projects. Now, you might ask what a program of project is. We'll move on to the next slide. It's a 5-year plan of the planned expenditures. So we don't need to get really specific in this, but it is something that we need to prepare so that we can let the public know that we are being good stewards of their money, and when we're spending the money in the manner for which it's intended, which in this case I failed to mention, but it's for transportation projects only, road maintenance and the like. So it is roadway maintenance and improvements. Also drainage improvements of the roadway are also included. And the city of Solvang has a requirement. The different cities throughout the county have different requirements for alternative transportation. And the city of Solvang has a 15% requirement. So 15% of the revenues that we receive have to be spent on sidewalks or bike paths or ADA ramps and that sort of thing. So that's, we go on to the next slide. So some of the highlighted projects, the South Alisal Road pavement reconstruction project was recently completed. That was spent with the majority of Measure A funds. Also a future Highway 246 bridge widening. That has a couple of different funding sources, but Measure A is one of those as well. And then the Mission Drive shoulder widening and bikeway project is another one that's out a little ways in our CIP, but that is planned to be brought to fruition with Measure A funds. And then over the next 5 years, we have ongoing city pavement management projects, slurry seals, roadway resurfacings, and then ongoing city sidewalk and ADA ramp projects. So that's something that we're going to continue to program in and kind of work on with the upcoming city budget as well. So revenue estimates over the next 5 years, we got these from SBCAG, They provided us these forecasts, and they've gone up. Things are looking pretty well as far as from last year's. So next fiscal year, we're looking at about 466,000. They get oddly specific for a projection, but you know, they get down to the single dollar. But these are the projections. I can read them off if you like, but happy to answer any questions for that if you like. And then that concludes the staff report, and we're open to answer any questions you have.
Are there any questions of the staff report?
My only question was gonna be what the dollar amount was when you showed it on the last slide. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
What I'm curious about is the Mission Shoulder, the widening project?
Yeah.
Where on Mission?
It's Mission between, I don't know exactly, but I know it's between Alamo Pintado and Alisal, in that area. On the
Going
Going
down
down
the
the hill.
Pine.
Yeah.
I think one time they were talking about putting bike lanes along the
Yeah.
one side of the guardrail,
Yeah.
making that a little bit more bike friendly.
Right.
So that is in our current
That was what I was
CIP.
curious. Okay, good,
So
thank you.
it's on the list. I think it's for, I'll let you know, but I think it's in the CIP for the 25-26 fiscal year. So we're looking at.
Is there also, I had heard that, I thought we were gonna be doing something on Friedensborg Canyon from Viborg heading north to encompass the bridge repair that was damaged somewhat during the flooding that we had back in that creek bed right along there. And encompass also some new water and sewer lines because they were all being exposed into the creek bed. And I thought some of that was part of is that a project not in the plans?
Not to my knowledge, but I can certainly look into it. I know that there's some,
Well, there was repairs done, but the sewer lines and water lines, there was it got to be quite extensive because
okay.
there was a lot of damage to the actual water pipes and sewer lines that
Okay.
became washed out because of the erosion of the water and the bridge. And it was kind of, I think it's just a temporary fix right now. I thought it was supposed to be widened up a little bit and some other lines go along there. But it was Friedensborg Canyon from Viborg north. I think it might have encompassed all of Friedensborg at one point that's in the city limits.
Uh-huh.
But at least the one section from Viborg north.
I can certainly look into that. I do know that Measure A funding would not be available for water sewer lines and
Right.
utilities. But if there's a roadway widening project, we certainly could. The Measure A program, the 5-year program projects, throughout the whole thing, we maintain a balance of just under $200,000 throughout the 5-year program. So if there are other projects that we want to do, we can certainly have those fundings
So
available.
I can provide a little bit of additional information. I believe what you're thinking, Mayor, is split up into a few different projects. As Roger mentioned, is because of the different funding sources. The wastewater pipeline is the project that was kind of coming up due in that area, and it's in design right now, but as far as construction, they'll have to discuss that based on the available funds. As you know, there's not enough funds in the wastewater fund for that.
Just one more item, right?
Yeah.
But I think there was also talk of putting sidewalks on the east side of Friedensborg from Chalk Hill up at least to Viborg to make it a little bit safer for people that are walking. And I know that's been discussed for a long time, and I just kind of want to make sure that doesn't get lost, because that would be a really good idea.
I have been contacted by a member of the public suggesting that as well, and that was one thing that we certainly can discuss with the upcoming budget discussion.
We'll definitely look into all of that as part of the CIP
Yeah.
development.
Perfect. Okay. So, do I need to open it up to public comment at this time? Is there anyone, I don't have any speaker slips up here, but if there's anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this item or have any comments or suggestions, thoughts going forward, next, come on up.
Quick thought, seeing the presentation, and I know, I'm not sure if it's crossover, but wouldn't some of this money be available for Copenhagen Drive? Pedestrian friendly, replacing, making it, just a thought.
possibly.
That could be something we can look into if we want to assign these monies. We can look and see if that was an acceptable use in the program.
All right. Aaron? Make sure you, thank you.
Aaron Peterson Solvang. You know, regarding the bike lane, because that's been talked about before from Old Mill Road where the AMR is, down that hill, right? I think Caltrans probably has a right-of-way. You'd have to look into it. The road is raised, but the city owns the land below. Why couldn't we go down below and stay away from the highway? You know what I mean? So if you're ever driving there and you go down that hill, you look down to my house and the windmill, why couldn't it drop down but where AMR is, down below and get down to the light in front of the banks? Not widening 246 for a bike lane. I don't know what that is, $1 zillion. But maybe it's a moved over bike lane. I don't know if we have the right of ways to do it or not, you know.
So are you talking going down?
Sure, Don Brad owns the AMR building, and then
Right.
the city owns the triangle in front of the windmill and then the banks, but I'll bet you Caltrans has got a bunch of right-of-ways in there that a 5-foot wide bike lane be cheaper than adding it to 246 high, is my point. It's just a thought.
If I may, the prior city engineer and I had discussed a little bit about that, and his thinking was, at the time, that we donate a little bit of that property that the city owns to the side so that we could actually expand it into another lane as well as a bike lane. But that would require that we give up some property rights to Caltrans and that Caltrans agrees to go in and do the work. Obviously, we can't do it. But that's another approach to that, the bike lanes and things. But I like the idea of putting the bike lane around, it gets it out of the traffic entirely. I think that's a great idea.
Is the property this side of the bank that goes up the hill, is that city property?
No.
The vacant lot, that large vacant lot? this side of it?
There's some,
Portions of it.
yes. But just to clarify, the project that's here, we're really talking about the bridge, was it going towards Santa Ynez from Alamo Pintado? And it's really widening that area, and basically where you have the bike lane that stops, making a bike lane continuous going through by the gas station, connecting to Alamo Pintado. That's what this project here is.
Oh, it's not going up the hill to Pine Street?
Not all the way to Pine Street, no.
I think it's just from the bridge to Elmwood. I think it incorporated possibly, everyone was talking about a roundabout there. And I think that might have been part of it. I don't know if that's still the same
So-
discussion, but
The latest discussions with Caltrans, and there was some money allocated last year from SBCAC, additional money towards this project, was just to really fix the bridge and add the bike lane and make all that, both bike and pedestrian, going all the way to Alamo Pintado. And that's a project that's been in the works for a long time with Caltrans. Now there is movement with Caltrans. There was agreements reached last year with Caltrans. But based on Caltrans' schedule, that's why it's scheduled for 25, 26, because that's when they're ready to move forward with this project.
yeah. It's a ways down there.
Yeah, it's a ways away.
All right, any other comments or questions? That's all for here. Is there anyone out in Zoom or on the telephone that would wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back for final comments and a motion.
Do we need a motion on this?
Think,
Yes, you do.
I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution 22-1159, Measure A, 5-year local program of projects.
I'll second it.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Infante,
Yes.
Councilmember Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Carrick.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Moving on to our regular business, item number 6. Madam Clerk, would you please read that into the agenda?
Discussion regarding Copenhagen Drive closure. Preliminary conceptual project review. Receive staff report outlining options and rough cost estimates that could be considered for implementation of a permanent closure of Copenhagen Drive and provide staff with policy direction.
Thank you. So I will start with a little bit of background on this item. Copenhagen Drive has been closed to vehicular traffic since the summer of 2020. Specifically, it was originally closed for 4th of July as an alternative way to hold that celebration when events were not permitted. And then the city extended various times the closure based on COVID-19. The requirements from the state for the need to, where restaurants were only allowed to serve outdoors. So it was in the interest of the city to allow for outdoor dining so that tourists could continue to enjoy our restaurants and establishments, and it also helped with social distancing when those requirements were in place. The City Council had set Copenhagen reopening date for February 1st of 2022, but at that point there was yet another significant surge in COVID-19, and that decision was postponed. The last direction we received from the City Council was to prepare some cost estimates and rough estimates as to what it would look like potentially if the city wanted to go with a permanent closure. So that's what we have prepared for you today. Of course, the recommendation today, and you have all the flexibility, it's within your discretion on the direction that you give us today. But you could either proceed to, or direct us to proceed with one of the alternatives, or you could direct staff to return with a plan to reopen Copenhagen going forward. I would just remind that the COVID-19 emergency is still in effect, even though the regulations are definitely very different now. But if, depending on what your direction is, if there was a plan for reopening, we will definitely cross-check all of our emergency declaration requirements as part of that process. And with that, I will turn it over to Roger, who has, we have worked with Roger as well as with our consultant for planning, Lori Tamura, and discussed the options in terms of what it would take to process a permanent application. So Roger will present those findings.
Okay. Can we get the PowerPoint back up? So we work with our planning staff, as Zena mentioned. Thank you, Zena. We work with our planning staff to go over what it would take, because in order to keep it closed, there does need to be some sort of environmental analysis done. Primarily a traffic study. We need to see how, keeping it closed, what the impact that has onto the roadway network. So we can go one of two ways. We're looking at, if you do an independent review, that would require a separate traffic study, and then a CEQA document. Negative declaration is the, either negative declaration or an EIR, depending on what the impacts are. If we can't mitigate the impacts of it, then we're looking at EIR. And that cost for the traffic study and the EIR was around $125,000. Negative declaration come in a little bit less. That's why the wide range there. Fortunately, we're in the middle of our general plan update. So we have a consultant already working, doing a robust traffic, or I don't know if they've started, but they're getting ready to do a very robust traffic study to analyze, the impacts of all the land use and everything else that's being discussed. So we could add this as part of their analysis. So it wouldn't be as much as the independent study, and it'd probably take about the same amount of time. Then an EIR document, which is already in the discussion, is going to be required, and then the circulation element update, which is what's kind of part of the package as well. So we'd be able to do that. So our redevelopment options, we looked at 3 different options to move forward with. One is this minimal redevelopment, kind of keeping things the way they are, doing some spit and polish, and doing some enhancements because we know that it's going to be permanent. And then the second one is a partial redevelopment. What we had talked about is widening the sidewalks, widening the paver sidewalks, and reducing the roadway down for the roadway would still need, you'd still need to have access for emergency vehicles, for trash trucks, that sort of thing, delivery vehicles. So, but narrowing that section down. And then we have the full redevelopment, which is just clean slate. Let's take everything out and build something that we want to see, that you know, sky's the limit. Although that's obviously the more expensive prospect. So the minimal redevelopment, we would look at doing a slurry seal to protect the asphalt. That would also eradicate all the striping, so give us a clean canvas, so to speak. We would replace the bollards with some concrete planters. We already have some concrete planters on order for the closure by Lot 2. So, because we don't have the bollards there, so we wanted to do something a little nicer than what's out there. So we have those on order, we're still waiting. It's stuck on a barge out in LA Harbor or something like that. Taking some time, but they're getting here. Install hanging lights across the street. Now, my understanding, and I've seen the boxes, we already have the lights. It's just a matter of having a project to actually hang the lights. As I understand it, the reason why those aren't up is because it was problematic. But if we say, hey, this thing's gonna be closed from now on, and we wanna beautify the road and make it, you know, enhance things, we can certainly take a look at what it would take in order to put those in. And then there's a potential for installing on-street decals or artwork. They do have some products out there. We can do the city logo, we can do just about anything, any public art. We can have someone come up with some nice artwork and put that down. You see it in the picture, bottom right, that's the city of Hermosa Beach. They did a thermoplastic logo in the middle of an intersection, and that's so.
Obviously, as a disclaimer, we're not proposing this for Solvang. It
No.
would be in accordance with Solvang guidelines.
Yes, of course.
But it's also for a driving
Oh.
intersection,
Oh, yeah.
so it's not just a pedestrian, we could do that anyway.
Yes, we could do that. We could do that wherever we want. There are some cities that have looked into doing that for fancy crosswalks. Do a brick paver without actually putting in brick pavers. You pave it and you stamp it. You actually set down into the asphalt. You create a texture, and then you put the thermoplastic on top. It kind of looks like brick. It's not. You'll notice it when you're walking on it. You know it's not brick, but if you look from far right, it looks like brick.
It would probably reduce the liability of people tripping on the bricks too.
Well, you wouldn't get the differential that cause a trip hazard. And then with this, we could encourage the private development of parklets through the encroachment permit process. Is if we wouldn't have to do anything and allow the private businesses to build their own parklets, build something that would come out into the roadway and be flat, be ADA compliant, so you don't have to step down from the curb. We can certainly work with them on the standards and what would need to be developed there. And estimated cost for all these things is about $100,000. It could be a little more, it could be a little less, depending on how hard we want to go at it. But this is also something that we could do and start implementing while we wait for, one of the next, for the funding to come in, or for the environmental process and everything else for the next two items, which we'll discuss. So the next one is partial redevelopment. So we would widen the sidewalk by about 16 feet on both sides of the roadway with brick pavers. Grind and overlay the center roadway to about 14 to 16 feet wide. And the only reason why we would need to grind it is because the extension of the pavers, it wouldn't line up with the existing, where the asphalt is now, so we'd have to bring that down to where the elevation that it wants to be. So there's going to be some expense there. And then extend the bulb outs at the intersections. What you're going to see is at the intersections, for instance, on First Street, as if you want to pull, if you're driving by Copenhagen, you're going to see kind of an extension of the curb there. There's already some bulb outs, but it would be just a little bit more in order to narrow the roadway down. Permanent planters to capture the drainage, that would be definitely a requirement because we would be redeveloping existing impermeable surface. So we would have to capture that water, let it soak into the ground and convey it, plus with the curb and gutter, that's what handles the drainage now, and that'd be covered with new pavers. So we'd have to do something there, so we could, but we can get creative and do some nice planters there. And then some new street furniture. And we can even work the street furniture into some of the planters and do some more permanent stuff depending on what our budget allows and what the design allows. The estimated cost for this, about 1.3 million is what we're looking at. And that is with the asphalt in the middle of the roadway. If we went pavers for the entire width, it would be about 1.6 million. So that would, or brick. And then with the full redevelopment is the renewal of the entire streetscape, including the existing brick sidewalk. So the brick sidewalk that's out there now, we would just take everything out and renew everything so that it all lays out well. There's no, there would be no inconsistencies. It would all look very consistent. Yeah, we would do many of the elements that are in the partial redevelopment, but we could do some other things. You know, an archway entryway feature as you enter Copenhagen from one side or the other. Intersection treatments at 1st and 2nd Street, do you know, like a little traffic circle type thing. You can do that at, you know, kind of an entryway feature or traffic feature as well. Also, we could look at revising the access to Lot 2 to Copenhagen Drive, extend the closure just past the Welcome Center. And that's kind of why I show the bottom right picture there. It's, you know, create like a little park-like plaza setting where you got the Welcome Center there as you enter. Because you don't have to worry about traffic coming back and forth on Copenhagen. So that's just some options that we look at. And then additional built-in street furniture and shade structures. You know, we can actually put benches on the planters. You know, so we're gonna have some something planters. So it really is a clean slate. We could do whatever we want based on some of the items that I've discussed here. We're looking at about $3.5 million to do basically just brand new. But that would renew everything. So with that, I'll hand it back up to Zena.
So, any questions at this point?
Yes, are there any questions on the staff report?
Yeah, my question's for Roger. Have you had a chance to look at the traffic study that we had, was it I think 2015 or 2016? Because I believe there was a traffic study made. It would be great if we can see it so that we compare it to the current traffic study that's gonna be coming up with the general plan.
I am not familiar with the traffic study, but I can certainly take a look at it and bring it forth.
I don't believe we've voted on retaining the closure, have we?
You have not, no. Your direction was to explore what it could potentially look like. That's why we're here today. Once again, your action today, we're just looking for policy direction. It's completely within your discretion what you direct us to do with Copenhagen Drive closure. You could move either towards a permanent closure or reopening or any option in between.
It seems if there's any thought at all about doing a reopening, that should be done at the front end, obviously. While there's not much there that needs to be cleaned up or repositioned. Just a thought, maybe do that for a while. We've had, 2 years now with the closure, and we give it some time reopening, and then revisit it at that time after people get to see both things. I hate to say or feel that we're automatically going into a permanent closure, because I'm not sure that that's been decided.
It has not been decided, no.
Go ahead, Councilmember.
So we just had a goal setting session Saturday, right? And we had a survey done, and the number one issue in the survey is parking. closing Copenhagen loses 60 parking spaces. So right off the bat, there seems to be a reason not to keep it closed from the parking alone. The other thing that, and the traffic study, I think, is something we really need to take a look at again, because I think it constricts traffic flow a lot from the things I've been hearing. But what I'm seeing mostly is, if you take a look, there's 4 or 5 businesses that get put tables out on the street and get the advantage of it. The retail businesses don't have the tourists down the sidewalk looking in their windows. They're out in the middle of the street where they can't see it, and there's a little bit of concern about that. So we were about to talk about raising the taxes so that we can come up with enough money to handle the projects that this city needs for water and wastewater and parking and things of that nature. And we're looking at spending, $1.5 to $3.5 million to close a section of Copenhagen that primarily benefits 5 businesses out of 20-something in those 2 blocks. I think that's inappropriate.
The option, the partial, or the middle one, does that was gonna leave the roads open, correct? Because you were only extending the sidewalks out and still having 14 to 16 feet. Was that gonna be for traffic or for pedestrians to walk?
What we're considering right now, we can open Copenhagen, we can close Copenhagen. Again, that hasn't been decided. But the options we were looking at were for full closure, to close it. The middle one was leaving the middle open for delivery vehicles, trash trucks, emergency vehicles if they need to get in.
So delivery vehicles, they would still be, a lot of those delivery vehicles are actually large vehicles that utilize the alleys right now, which to me, a large vehicle and pedestrians doesn't mix too well safely.
Yeah, that's correct.
I get it if it's the guy picking up the trash, but it's a lot different vehicles than the ones that are actually delivering what I see on Moley and on Parkway. Those are pretty large delivery vehicles. Anyway, I was just curious if that was, so it wasn't necessarily for vehicular traffic, but special needs traffic.
Yeah, and that's what we analyzed was the 3 options for keeping Copenhagen closed.
The other question is if we went to going to having the engineers or the people that we have in the GP right now working on the traffic, have they started already checking the traffic and studying, collecting that data as Copenhagen is closed right now? Because I'm sure they're not gonna be, I understand wanting to have a 2016 traffic study, but that's 5-6 years ago. And our traffic has significantly increased since 2016 or whenever that study was done. And to me, it's irrelevant what it was 6 years ago from what all of us know, what we have going on now. It's a lot more impacted, whether Copenhagen was open or closed. But would the option of still having the traffic study by the GP engineers, if we went and opened it, as Council Member Thomas was mentioning, to maybe have a baseline for both, one traffic study with it closed, and then one opening it up and letting it flow for 4 or 5 months, 6 months, and seeing what that study is. That's actually how we're gonna get, and to me, it seems an intelligent way to decide if we wanna close it or not. And then on the other note is the same thing with my discussions with the retail is that right now, it only benefits the restaurants and the wineries that are able to bust out more seating, and a lot of the retail, especially not just on Copenhagen, but down on the north side of First and the south side of First. I know Ms. Wittenbrock, she's mentioned that there's hardly any pedestrian traffic coming down that direction because everyone's on Copenhagen. And I know the same retailers are having some of those same issues on Mission Drive, because obviously that's a frequented road, being a highway, but no closures other than a few on the west end of town there. So I was just kind of curious if that would still keep the traffic study costs. I understand the general plan costs would go up, but I kind of feel it would be more beneficial for everyone, and then it might be something, instead of it being just for the council to vote on, that it might be something that would be, once everyone has the real numbers of what it's supposed to look like, I think it should be open to everyone to vote. I understand 122 responses is a significant amount, but as Councilmember Clark so aptly pointed, that was 3% of what our registered voters are. And there's a lot of people that use that, and I kind of would like to see, I would like to see it maybe go to a vote. I know it's just one more thing to add to it, but I think we would have a lot more people involved in it instead of just 122. And I get that, 70% want it closed, but that's 120, 70% of 122 and not the rest of the residents.
And
Those are my thoughts.
And if you recall, the survey, that was 70% wanted it closed until they got to the next question, which said, would you be willing to spend $3 million to keep it closed? And that changed drastically.
I may have missed it. Where would that 3.5 million come from?
Yeah.
There is different, well, let me just address maybe one question at a time.
Sorry.
So where we are right now with the general plan update and the traffic study, we have not started doing the traffic study yet. So if you wanted us to have a traffic, essentially the plan would be, as of now, is if it's closed, we would be doing a traffic study with it being closed. If it's open, we would be doing a traffic study with it open. We could add the scope of work to do a traffic study for each option. It would probably increase the cost some, and it would also add time. So if that's what you directed us to do, we would need some time with it being closed to do the traffic study before we could move on to the other option. So that's where we are with the general plan update. We're just diving into all of the elements. So as part of the traffic element, the traffic study will be conducted.
So, going back to that, with the traffic study being done, when is that projected to take place as part of the general plan?
We are working on finalizing the kind of the second part of the general plan update precise schedule as we are diving into the actual elements development. Obviously having the GPAC and everybody, we want to make sure that we're not just rushing through this and we're actually taking our time to study appropriately. So the elements updates are scheduled to be all completed within the next 6 months. And a lot of them, as far as there's subcontractors to the general plan contractor, meaning a harnish, we have, they have a traffic planning firm subcontracted for that, and so all the subcontractors will essentially be working simultaneously on the background. So that process will be starting within the next couple of months and it will be completed within 6 months.
Timing doesn't work. Well, at this point, are there any other questions here? Because I do have a fairly significant amount of public comment.
Okay, well, I just thought that's why it would be interested to look at the previous traffic study and because we have it done when the street is fully open. We don't have one when the street is fully closed. So I think it would be interesting to compare both of them. I was still having trouble finding traffic when I'm coming into work after noon. So I don't think the conditions then were much different than they are now, but also maybe a civic engineer would have a much more educated answer than what my perception is. So that's just, my input. But I like the idea of coming to a decision with this through the general plan, because the costs of doing this right are significant and we want as much input as possible. And it also saves us from having to invest more funds to just do the study to see how we would do it.
I was just thinking back 6 years ago, I don't believe Solvang Mesa Road was open yet. So we didn't have traffic going up Skip Mesa all the way through to Chalk Hill, utilizing that back way. I don't think 6 years ago that was happening yet.
Probably right around there.
It was really close to that, but that's one other bypass that people are utilizing now, that we do have a lot of issues with people complaining about traffic and speeding going through Skip Mesa as well as going on Chalk Hill. So, and then of course utilizing 5th Street, the normal one that everyone had been using before, 5th Street to Laurel to Eucalyptus and down to Friedensburg and Viborg and over. Anyway, I agree with the saying that I think it would be more prudent for us to at least incorporate it with the general plan study. That makes the most sense. Any other comments?
Which I
I'll
can
take it out to go. I'm sorry.
answer Councilmember Thomas's question about $3.5 million. We currently have about $6 million in our general fund reserve of non-committed dollars. Of course, I tend to be conservative and not advocate for spending all your cash at once. So I would say the best options, if something like this project was to be considered, would probably be a financing option if we wanted to move forward fast. Obviously, any additional sales tax, etc., that could be derived would be helpful in paying for that.
If I remember correctly, in one of the financial reviews, you stated that right now, all of our capital improvement projects, if we did every one of them, we would wipe out the bank.
Correct.
So we don't have the money to do this.
It's all about priorities.
Thank you.
There was something I was gonna say, but I think I will refrain at this time. I have a number of speaker slips that wish to speak on this particular item, and I'll start off with Diane Wittenbrock.
Good evening, Mayor Urick and City Council. I have, after Mr. Afonte's statements, I'm redirecting what I was gonna say, because he nailed it on the head. He nailed it on the head. The closure just does not work. It does not benefit the retail. There's no big benefit anyway. It's just that people think it's cool. The traffic is horrible, the gridlock is horrible, emergency vehicles don't get through. It's just, there's no purpose for it. And at this time, we don't have the money. We don't have the money as a city. We have the wastewater, which just keeps getting put back on the books and back on the books. We need to address those things before we address something that's just sounds good. Okay? Also, I would like to see more things like the sidewalks cleaned on a regular basis. They're pretty gross. Trash picked up more often because it blows around, especially with the masks. Flowers, the flowers were taken away because of COVID. We need more flowers back. Little things like that, inexpensive things to beautify downtown. And then work on things, our infrastructure, because that affects everyone that is a homeowner or a business owner. Solvang's not broken. We don't need to fix it. We just need to enhance it. It's the rising cost of everything. We're looking at possibly a $3.5 million project. That's not really we're not gonna get the benefit from it. It's just gonna be a bigger playground for the skateboarders, the bicyclists, and the gridlock. Thank you.
Thank you. One question I just had related to that, because I know we've had some other ones, I think Jennifer had mentioned the same thing about this, the cleaning, the trash, and I thought we had upgraded how many times trash is getting picked up, as well as the steam cleaning is back. And is there a certain time frame that that's happening, that the business owners are not seeing it? Because that's two different streets that I know that are represented. That's First and Copenhagen. And both of them are saying that, and I've had other residents that have made the same comments that are saying the sidewalks don't seem to be as clean as they used to be. And I don't know if it's not getting done the exact amount of time or if it's just different, because I know it's in our budget and we're paying for it. And why are the business owners not seeing the benefit of that? And so I know there's there.
Roger, you want to take it first?
Yeah, I do know that we just recently reached out to the pressure washing contractor that we have, so I will take a look at that tomorrow morning and see exactly when they're scheduled to come in, and I'll report back.
Thank you.
But I would just comment that, yes, throughout the last less than a year, we have, and you've seen this in your agenda packet, that we have more than doubled the sidewalk cleaning. So it used to be on quarterly basis, now it's like every 2 weeks type of basis. We have also added an extra trash can next to every trash can that there was in the city, so that's double trash can pickups. We have doubled bathroom cleanings as well, and sometimes quadrupled on the weekends and special events. But there's a lot of people out there, a lot of people outside, a lot of people with the trash. We would like to continue to work with the businesses that are there next to those trash cans to also partner with us as much as possible to keep that trash under control on a regular basis.
And I know we also added the plantings. The city ended up taking that over from a couple of private citizens, and I think we have people doing the flower beds and stuff in downtown, so.
Yes, we have our contractor back.
She's shaking her head no, but I know, I'm just saying, I know that we're paying for it. Not saying we're getting it, but we'll have to make sure that's happening. Not right now, Jennifer, because we're working on this other thing. That was just related to that. Thank you. Sorry. I have noticed your emails though, so just so you know. That's why I brought it up. Next on this item is Max Hamburg.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, I'm gonna reiterate what Diane said. Yeah, the street's getting cleaned and on my corner. I've noticed, and we need that, but I did notice the trash cans, and we try to help take that in.
Thank you.
And then on another note, we talk about the traffic, and currently we've been in a perfect storm in Solvang. Business has been through the roof everywhere. Everybody you talk to almost may hear a little bit. So, and I'm not sure we will continue this pace. I hope we do. I really wish we would, but I think it'll slow down, which will help parking, traffic, and all that. And as far as Copenhagen as a businessman on the corner, I could go either way, but I think it's time we try and reopen it again and see how that looks. And I think for the most part, the citizens, if they had a vote, and they did know what they were up against financially, I'm not sure they would all agree on that kind of thing. So let's see what I had some other notes. And then if you do go down the road of closing it permanently, a couple of things. Removable bollards, you talked about cement, removing the bollards and putting in cement planters. A, that would be horrible for our parade route. B, you still have to have it open. Is it 16 feet for a fire truck? I thought it was 26, but the lane is only 16 feet it is. Okay, well, that's not too bad. What was that?
Might be 20.
Roger says 16. I'm sure he's looked into it. So I don't question that. The street art was a great idea, I like that, we can do that anyways. A clock, a windmill, a tower, it look beautiful in town. Oh yeah, and then if you do also go on the clothing, we have to think about mobile carts and selling things, carts driving out on the street. I know we have had a little bit of fresh fruit stands around that have been a little trouble, and I could just see that building because of the law. But if we were to close Copenhagen, that would be, I think it would be a disaster. I know, I sure wouldn't like it if I saw a cart full of Crocs out there, or phone covers, or whatever. So that's something to take in mind when you think about closing it. So let's open it and see how it goes for a while, and if it continues like it is, we need to close it, maybe we can try it again in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Max. Next up, I have Kim Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. Kim Jensen, Engelbert's Chocolate. Well, everyone's pretty much stolen all my thunder, pretty much. I would reiterate the fact what Mark was saying earlier. I think we need to think about what our rate of return on something. And if we have, I think I heard earlier that quite possibly we don't have the money to take care of our waste management, so we need to look back at prioritizing. Number two, how are we going to pay for this? And if it does go towards somebody having to pay for it, I'm assuming that the property owners would have to pay or have to submit something, which then comes back to all of us, and it's going to come down, because I'm sure they're smart guys, and they put that in their contracts, that if there's any additional tax payment, it's going to come back to us. So then we're going to have to raise our prices so we can survive. And some of these people just are now hanging on by a little bit. So I just think that it's not conducive to what we're trying to accomplish right now. And if you were to do something, I'd say do the alleys, because those things are horrible. And right now, they need the work of any, if there's any street work that needs to be done, is our alleys. And people walk down those, believe it or not, even with all those trucks going back there. That would be the best thing to look at first. So, finally, no, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And last speaker slip I have up here on this item is Aaron Peterson.
Evening, Aaron Peterson, Solvang. It was a COVID issue, it's not a COVID issue. I know that it's going on still, the COVID issue, but it was for us restaurateurs to have tables outside when you couldn't eat inside. You could still go in a shoe store, but you couldn't eat inside because you had to take a mask off, couldn't do it. So that's what started it. I've got 2 restaurants in Santa Barbara. March 9th, all goes away down to the waterfront. We've got to pull our tables and chairs back to our patios, and all the A-frames that we've had out go away. That's their drop dead date. On the Mesa, it's the same over on Milpa Street and the side streets. They're allowing State Street to remain at a 20-foot wide. They're making, I don't know where they came up with the number, but they're making them cut their parklets back so it's 20-foot wide all the way down, to a very big expense for a lot of restaurants. They're allowing that because they are further along than we are in the study. They've spent millions of dollars studying what they want to do permanently on State Street. If it was to stay closed, I don't know how we do a traffic study. Traffic study when it's closed, that doesn't tell you anything. It just tells you there's more traffic on other streets. But if you open it, maybe nobody drives on that street, so the traffic still stays. The key is how many cars go from A to B and don't stop and use it as a bypass when it's open. And then those cars have to go somewhere else when it's closed. I'm not a traffic expert, but the GPAC gentleman came and told us about 246, and they were, I think it was 60% of the cars going on 246 don't stop in Solvang. They go from down to there, east to west, right? So anyway, that's key. The last thing is if we get into discussion after the traffic and a parking study, because we do lose 60, 70 parking, why don't we lose 130 parking? I don't understand where 60 or 70, because Copenhagen goes from 5th to all the way to there. who picked the block and a half and said, that's the one we're gonna study, that's the only one that we're gonna spend the $3.5 million on. We're not gonna look at the next block and the next block and the next block and the next block. So we put the cart before the horse by decided somehow that that's where, and it wasn't you folks, it was the council before, in the middle of COVID, that that's where we're gonna block it off. And I don't understand, I had no input on it, and I would love it closed down at Peasants Feast to our building across the street, close that block off. I've talked to people about that. Why can't I get my street blocked off with tables, chairs, and fountains and I'll spend the money. You wouldn't even have to spread the check, just give me the darn dirt and I'll close it off. So that's the bigger picture. The process has to be fair. You've got to get people involved in it. If you guys decide to open up Copenhagen, you also got to be fair that those folks that have parklets on Mission Drive, not picking on business, but it's got to be fair to everybody. They've got to come down. Any of this illegal pushing out, whether it's down in Nielsen Center or at East End or West End of town, has got to be treated fair. You've got to have buy-in, and it's got to be fair, the process. Anyway, that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Aaron.
One more thing, I just, one real quick thing about, they mentioned the trucks. If I'm not mistaken, there is an ordinance in Solvang about delivery trucks on Copenhagen at a certain time of the day. I don't know if we can look into that. I seem to remember in the past, there was a time ordinance for trucks to be on Copenhagen. So they deliver in the alleys instead.
Thank you. So that's all I have for speaker slips. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Jennifer, come on up.
Thank you. Jennifer Sony speaking. I agree with Diane, and basically, and I think I've spoken about this on the sidewalks, and particularly when I walk from by the windmill, there's litter, there's trash. Even the lady that is the manager of the puzzle shop talks about having to pick up masks and unsanitary things by her business on a regular basis. What I watch even on the outside of my business on Copenhagen, there are no more flowers, no more landscape, and there are dogs repeatedly urinating, feces, and some people pick it up, some don't. I mean, it's an ongoing situation, and then my pavers in front of my business were always clean. They're not now. It's an ongoing, and that by the Copenhagen house is nasty, to use a word. As far as Copenhagen being opened or closed, I think I understand on the retail end of it, I understand on the wine and restaurant and those businesses. For me, I see parts of Copenhagen from first on that normally if you have the restaurants and most of the day, there's nothing later on in the day because they close early. It seems something that I don't think is favorable to look at for our city. Although I do think there's some way that you could do a bridge where what could be favorable that would create a European atmosphere on Copenhagen. That's something that I think great minds would need to get together and orchestrate. Whether you did have like your flowers, your vendors, you're closed on Wednesdays for farmers market, that's favorable. I just think there's something that could be benefited other than just being closed-minded and it being no, 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 we're not going to do this. I think maybe what if you had someone say yes, 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 we can make the businesses flourish, yes, yes, yes. We can make Solvang grow, go beyond looking like Ventura, go beyond looking like Santa Barbara. Yes, 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 we are the Danish capital of America, and we flourish, and we create an environment that is picturesque. We have our dancers on the street on Copenhagen. We have the flowers. It is truly Denmark, nearly like we're looking at like in Amsterdam. And with that, I close.
Thank you, Jennifer. Aaron?
10 seconds, 30 seconds. To Jennifer's point, I hadn't thought about this before. The reason that it's kind of dark and dank in the afternoon and empty is because the restaurants close early. State Street's just the opposite. They crank at night. I mean, the streets are jammed on the walking street. You walk through it in the day, in the morning, it's disgusting, it's dirty because nobody's there, because the restaurants all do the evening. So you got to think about how we would do it in our town if we close the street, thinking about what businesses we have. And timing is obviously everything. We're not bars, we're early morning family town.
Right.
That's a good point.
Are there any others wishing to speak that are in-house? Seeing none, I'll take it out to Zoom. I think that's Rennie. I see a hand up.
Sure. Rennie?
You just muted.
Rennie, if you could unmute, you just muted yourself.
You're unmuted now. Go ahead.
There we go.
There we are.
Okay, happy to see that Copenhagen Drive closure remains on the agenda. Your own survey initially said it, the greatest number of residents want it, and the greatest number of businesses want it. A new survey was done for the financial workshop. I believe 63% again said they want to keep Copenhagen Drive closed. A second question looked more like a scare tactic question, but what if it cost $3 million? But again, 30% said yes, and 35% said maybe, let's see more information. Imagine if you had asked, would you support the permanent closure of Copenhagen Drive if it was free for the city? I've said it before and I'll say it again. Nobody should get real estate for free from the city. Let the businesses pay for this and let the city contribute to it and facilitate it. I count not 4 or 5 restaurants like in Fonto. I count 26 parking spaces that are encroached upon by businesses on Copenhagen Drive, including a couple of potential ones. Plus the trolley has 5 parking spaces more or less permanently. All of us gets it for free. Charge the businesses $1 per foot per month, and you will easily get $60,000 or more. Maybe you can collect at least another $10,000 in a business improvement district from property owners. So let's say a beautiful pedestrian street can be had for $1.5 million. If financed at 1.25% interest, it will cost us a measly $18,750 per annum to have a beautiful pedestrian street, and it will leave us with additional $50K to pay off the loan or deal with interest fluctuations. And that is with the city spending 0 of its own money. I do think you should contribute something since you're the greatest benefactor of tax collections, but 0. Imagine the intangible value this would bring to Solvang. It would enhance our brand as the Danish capital of America. It will bring enjoyment of the downtown area for the residents as they vote for. And I think it would increase TOT and sales tax over the long run. Yes, we occasionally hear this, it will wreck and destroy our town. You know what? Copenhagen Drive has been closed since June 5th, 2020. That's almost 2 years. Nobody has died. Quite the opposite. Businesses have survived. And the town is neither wrecked nor destroyed. Yes, parking and traffic needs to be worked on. But again, we're neither wrecked nor destroyed after 2 years. At the January 10th meeting, Councilmember Infante was surprised that Ben Olsen was for the closure of Copenhagen Drive, since he owns a business on Mission. This is not about Mission Drive versus Copenhagen Drive. This is about Solvang and its future and adding value to our town. It can be done, and your residents want it. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Appreciate the comments. I don't know who's next, but there is one other one.
Mike Llewellyn?
What's the name?
Mike Llewellyn?
Oh, Mike Llewellyn?
Please unmute.
Yes, hello.
There you are.
Mike Llewellyn here. Yeah, Mike Llewellyn, Lucas Llewellyn Vineyards. So I guess just listening to some of the other comments, yeah, I look at, obviously, our taste room is one of the, as I've mentioned before, is one of the direct beneficiaries of this. But I do believe it enhances the town having the street closed. You know, you got the study, but, you know, we hear so many comments just in general from both locals, people who visit, how much they like it. You know, when I've talked to several business owners, I've heard some complaints, but pretty much everyone says business is good. So in terms of breaking things, you know, I'd be careful changing it when essentially business has been booming. I think for most people in Solvang, business is good with it closed. In terms of traffic, I mean, obviously that's a concern. Yeah, I think at a minimum, like the one council member says, we should pull up the old traffic study, have something to compare to, you know, and you know, I don't think in terms of Copenhagen being alternative for Mission, I think it's 7 in the morning or at nighttime, people might use it, but whenever, you know, Mission Street is back up, no one's using Copenhagen as an alternative. You know, they might be going over to Oak Street or some of the other side streets, and it seems like that would be the effect of where the traffic is. But anyway, like I said, I think the town would benefit by keeping it open. You know, with the 3 examples that were given earlier, if people, you know, I think like Rennie said, you could finance this and it could be done fairly inexpensively. Certainly, we would expect to pay some rent, you know, a fair rent, but something for using the public space. But of the 3 options, you know, if people are worried about the expense, you know, that first option is an inexpensive option. And, you know, we could still take it, you know, get it to the next stage. And I would think if the old traffic study from 5 or 6 years ago is a decent comparison, then you would want to do a traffic comparison with it closed to compare to that. So I guess that's how I'm looking at it. But again, and you know, like I said when I spoke last time, I do appreciate, you know, that it has been open. It's helped our business during COVID. So I do thank you for as much as it has been open. Thank you.
So Mike, I just wanted to clarify, you're saying to keep it open. You're actually meaning keep it closed.
Open to foot traffic. I want to keep it. I like to keep it as a pedestrian walkway.
Right. I just wanted to clarify that.
All right. That's fine.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else out in Zoom, and I'm trying to let everyone speak here. Anybody have any final comments before I bring it back to council? Kim? All right, bring it back for final council comments and some direction. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Infante.
At this point, the options in front of us are the 3 different cost expenditures, and all of them assume some level of closure. Although I appreciate Rennie's comments about letting the different businesses pay for, in I guess we'll call it item 1, which was the $100,000. Yeah, we could do it that way. It has some effect on the city. I don't think it's completely cost-free to the city. And I'm not sure every one of the enterprises would be willing to pay for it, or able to pay some of those costs. I'd have to look into that. I really don't know for sure. At this point, I'd like to suggest we put it on the next city council agenda to decide whether we leave it closed or open. We apparently, and I'd have to ask our attorney, we can't make that decision today because that's not part of the agenda.
You can't make the decision, but you can give direction to staff, because the agenda was to discuss the direction to staff. So the recommendation that you have is receive the staff report and provide staff with policy direction. If you were planning on keeping it open, keeping it closed, you would give direction to staff to take the steps necessary to move that ball forward, so to speak.
Okay. In that case, we can say we'd like to reopen it, because we've had the discussion on that from everybody, and ask staff to start that process.
That's the policy direction that you would be giving as to moving it forward. As to the steps that are necessary to take, we may or may not need to bring some of those back, but ultimately you would give staff direction as to which way you're leaning.
Let everybody else talk, because I want to make a motion in that regard.
Any other comments?
My only comments are, I believe that the residents or the visitors like it closed. I'd like to know what all 40 to 50 businesses between Atterdag and Alisol feel, whether they're all on board with it or not. I think the residents like it closed. I don't want to spend a lot of money. I would like to see it stay closed personally, but if the majority of the residents and the businesses want it closed, then I would support that. I personally think it looks nice. I think it adds a lot of flavor to our city, and I think the visitors like it a lot. But if there's a groundswell of support to have the street reopened, I wouldn't stand in the way of that. But I think it looks good the way it is. I think we can make it look a little bit nicer without spending a ton of money. I have no problem opening the street again and doing a traffic study and seeing how it goes for long term. But I just feel that I think it makes the town more appealing to the visitors with it being closed. That's just my opinion. And I would steer towards, you don't have to go out and spend $3 million if we are deciding to keep it closed. We don't have to say, yes, let's spend our $3 million. I don't think this has to be done overnight. If people like it the way it is, then spruce it up, spend a little bit of money, make it look a little bit neat, and go from there. That's just my opinion.
I would like to see us vote on a closure, at least for a period of time, because there's nothing that says at some point down the road, we could say, we thought this is the way it would be, and that's best, and people, can change their minds, including us. But my inclination now is to go ahead and reopen, and that's what I'll support.
Any comments?
I would just like to, for businesses to have the opportunity to chime in if we're gonna go one way or the other, particularly now that we have a number that they could work with. And
Well, we've had all these businesses chime in. So. Thanks. Well, okay. I'll put it this way, and we'll see what happens with it. I will move that we direct staff to start the process of reopening Copenhagen.
Okay, and as part of the process of the general plan, is the GPAC still gonna have a chance to chime in on this?
Yeah, not for a few months. It's gonna take them that long to get to it.
Okay, well, I think it would take a while anyway to decide what we're gonna do and how we're gonna pay for it anyway, so I think that's appropriate.
So the motion stands then that I'd like to direct staff to start reopening Copenhagen.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can we do that? That's not on the agenda, though.
You're giving direction to staff
Yeah.
to move in that direction.
Okay.
So we would be bringing
Come
back,
to a vote, I get it, okay.
yeah, you're just
I'm fine
giving
with that.
policy direction at
Got
this
it.
point. It's not saying, open it tomorrow.
Okay.
It's staff,
Let's,
find
at
out
a
what
future
needs
date,
to
let's
be
vote
done.
on it, got it, I'm good. Thank you.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
It's a yes. Mayor Pro Tem Infante?
Yes.
Councilmember Arona?
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas?
Yes.
Mayor Urick?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you all for your comments. Continue to get your comments in on the survey. for the general plan. We really need that from everyone, residents and business owners alike. Moving on to item number 7. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 7?
Discussion regarding tax measures or formation of a business improvement district. Receive staff report regarding revenue enhancing options, including tax measures, and authorize the city manager to engage a consultant to conduct a poll to evaluate voter preferences.
Okay, so this is an item that we have had several discussions on with council and also with the TAC as of recently. U.S. City Council actually approved, adopted, or set a goal or a priority within the fiscal sustainability goal to pursue 1% sales tax increase. So this item is here in front of you to seek further actionable direction today. The recommendation is for you to receive staff report regarding the revenue enhancing options, including tax measures, and authorize city manager to engage a consultant to conduct a poll to evaluate voter preferences for sales tax and transient occupancy tax increases, and to direct staff to return with further information for council direction, including proposed format and rate structure for consideration of forming a business improvement district. So I'll once again run through these slides, but you have already seen them in prior presentations. We can get the slides up. This slide here once again shows the comparison of Solvang breakdown of our discretionary revenues compared to California cities, which are averaged out on the right. You will see that majority of the cities in California, or on average cities in California, derive most of their revenue from property, followed by sales tax and then by TOT. The city of Solvang is a unique destination, obviously, so we have residents, frankly, enjoy more of the benefits of the taxes derived from our tourism economy compared to the property taxes. So the city of Solvang gets 50% of its discretionary revenues from transient occupancy tax, which is set at 12%, and then 16% from the sales tax. And the city of Solvang receives 1% of all the sales generated within the city of Solvang. Another 16% is derived by property taxes. This is once again the chart that I've been showing you that shows how the city of Solvang is really skewed to the left and up in terms of reliance on the TOT versus sales tax is what this is comparing. So if a city is on the horizontal line out to the right, they're really heavily dependent on sales tax, and if you have a dot that's really high up on the left, they're really dependent on the TOT. And so you will see that we are third most dependent as of this data point of 2018. And the other two destinations that are quite that high are the Mammoth Lakes and Yountville. So this is just capturing where we are today. The total sales tax collected within the city of Solvang is 7.75%. As I mentioned, we only get the 1% that's our portion from the sales tax is collected. That's what all jurisdictions in the state receive. That's 1%. The city of Solvang does not have a local sales tax. The county of Santa Barbara has a 0.5% sales tax added, which is your Measure A that funds all of the transportation projects, and the city of Solvang receives a portion of that. The TOT in the city of Solvang is set at 12%, and that all of that is retained by the city of Solvang. So you had asked before to learn some estimates as to how much an increase in these taxes would generate. And you will see that the 1% increase is estimated to generate about an additional $375,000. Half of that for 0.5%, 1% of sales tax conservatively here is estimated to derive about $1.4 million. I can tell you that we ended last year with a $1.6 million, so if we continue to grow that number, obviously that 1% will continue to bring more. And of course, half of sales tax is half of the 1.4 at 700,000. Now I wanted to present this, which was shown to the TAC, which is a chart that was actually developed as part of the economic element development for the general plan update. And what this does is derive an estimate of how much of that sales tax is coming from the spending of households, visitors, commuters, and business-to-business spending. So you will see that about $62 million is derived by household spending compared to 93 from visitor spending. So visitors are about 2/3 compared to a 1/3 of household spending by residents of the city of Solvang. This is just a comparison of different comparable destinations, kind of looking at either large destinations or more of the tourist destinations. So you will see, for example, that Yountville down below there has a TOT rate of 13% and 7.75% rate as well. But generally speaking, you will see that the highest TOT rate is shown in Los Angeles and San Francisco, those are larger jurisdictions, and Mammoth Lakes and Yountville, which are our comparisons on TOT, are at 13% compared to our 12%. And then obviously the sales tax ranges differently. Avalon Catalina has a whole 10%, and Carmel by the Sea at 9.25%. Los Angeles at 9.5%, and as I mentioned before, the average across the state of California as of about 5 years ago data was 8.5% sales tax average rate. So the recommendations as of today is in order for us to continue to move forward, if that's what the council would like to do. As I mentioned, it came through pretty clear through your goal setting session that there was an interest in pursuing a 1% sales tax increase. So the action today would be to authorize the city manager to engage in a consultant to conduct a poll to evaluate voter preferences for either just sales tax or sales tax and transit occupancy tax. I'm proposing that there's no need to allocate additional budget. We have some salary savings that could be applied to this, but it's obviously not the kind of effort that I would pursue without your authorization. So looking at whether or not you would like to go ahead and pursue contracting with polling, basically people that do statistical analysis of people's preferences, the voters' preferences. They can test the community based on statistically significant and statistically sound samples, so they will make sure that they include different demographics, age, income, etc. in their sample, and look at what kind of tax measure might be of preference for the voters. Additional consideration just to add is to continue, if you desire to continue discussions of forming a potential business improvement district. When this item was presented to the Tourism Advisory Committee that has a lot of the business owners on there, it was looked at preferably, and the Chamber of Commerce has invited me to speak to their board on March 23rd so that they can provide with their official opinion to the city as to their position on this.
Great, thank you. Is there any questions of council members at this time of the staff report?
Yeah, one thing, just a concern. I like the idea of going and polling the residents to find out what they want, but I think it's important that the poll establish what those funds would be for, so that the population understands that what we're trying to do by putting a 1% tax increase in, for instance, is to fund the library, the senior center. It's as Councilmember Arona had said, it's not to build something right now. This is going to be an annual income, and we need to have those things identified that would be paid for, excuse me, with that amount, so they understand what they're saying yes or no to. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Questions?
Isn't that the idea of figure out the preference on the consultant study?
Correct. So the consultant would set the questions to gauge that opinion of the voter as to what their preferences are in terms of what the sales tax would go for.
And then just to clarify, if it's something that's more specialized. It's a 2/3 vote as opposed to majority plus one,
Correct.
or 50% plus one.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
If you do a survey, I think it'd be very important, and I'm not a fan of raising taxes ever, but it'd be important to let the residents that are taking the survey know that whenever they go anywhere else outside of Solvang, they're already paying 8.75% in higher taxes. It's just to factor that into their decision. It's just a matter of not just saying, hey, we're raising your taxes, because we're already paying 8.75 whenever we go to Santa Barbara or anything. Or for Camarillo, we're paying the same 8.75. If we go to LA, you're paying 10%. So that's just, I would like to have that in the survey, have everything out there.
Of course.
Yeah, perhaps that's one question that can be asked. I'm sure whoever the consultant is can figure out what the best methodology is, but we would like to find out whether a measure like this would discourage locals from shopping in town, or if that would make them go elsewhere. There was, well, I mean, yeah, they.
More expensive everywhere else.
Well, they might go to Santa Maria, for example, but yeah, it's just because there is some concern that these would discourage people from shopping locally, and of course we want to encourage people to spend their money here and to support their local community. So that's one thing that I would like. And as far as Tibet, if there is interest in keeping Copenhagen closed and making the closure more beautiful, is that could that be a specific thing that they would that they would be willing to fund or to form a Tibet for?
I'm looking somewhat at the city attorney, but it would need to benefit the parcels of.
Yeah, so depending on the act that you start the T-bid under, it can either be assessed on a business or it can be assessed on property. In either situation, it has to benefit the people being assessed. So it's okay to have some minor tangential benefits to people who are not assessed, but the primary benefit has to be the people who are paying the actual assessments.
I think that's what they're trying to discuss at that 23rd meeting.
Correct. I think the discussion that the chamber wants to have is just general interest of the business community as to what they would be willing to look at. And based on that, whatever interest is gauged, we could then analyze how that could be formed into a potential business improvement district.
Well, is there any other comments or questions right now? Otherwise, I'll take it out to public comment. I have 2 speaker slips for this right now. Max Hamburg, come on down.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. While you guys were working last Thanksgiving, and I should have been here addressing some things, I was off in Pismo. And I decided for the first time in ever to actually print my bill and look at it. In Pismo, when my final bill came through, I was paying 15.75% taxes. And I'll go down the list. I have it here circled. It was an amazing thing. There was the room, right? And then there was an occupancy tax, a lodging business tax, San Luis Obispo County tourism tax, a state tourism tax. Then there was a resort fee, not included in that 15.75%, I said. Then there was another occupancy tax, another lodging business tax, another San Luis Obispo County tourism tax, and a state tourism fee. So, and all those total up to be 15.75%. So I think the TOT is the way to go on this. First of all, I honestly don't believe you're gonna have the citizens approve of a tax. And right now, I'm pretty sure that nobody's into taxing. So I would rather see the tourist pay that tax. Now, and then, on a side note, I have a VRBO, and we don't pay the hotel tax, the $2 a room or whatever it is. I would think that we could get a VRBO tax in Solvang, and there's another source of income that tourism pays for. So I think that's really important that I think tourism, they don't have a vote. I think the locals are really gonna have a tough time pushing a 1% sales tax, and although you could probably get, I don't know, I don't think so, but you could try. And T-bid, as they said, has to go towards, as does the TOT, it has to go towards the people it benefits, the hotels and stuff, but that's a general term that any walkways help the tourists or the hotels and everything. So I really think that's the way to go. And then why is it we're thinking about raising taxes? Because we've had a banner year. If we continue to have the banner years, that our income is going to be pretty good. So again, I did say we were in a perfect storm in my last speech. Not sure it's going to last, but if it does, it's great. So anyways, I think having said all that, we need to look at other hotel bills in other parts of California. I was trying to get some today, but I couldn't get any more because there are a lot of fees and taxes on top of that TOT that you could encompass in the TOT. Thank you.
Thank you, Max. I have one other speaker slip for Kim Jensen. Thank you, Kim. You can sit down now.
I have 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. One quick thing, paying taxes, very conservative there. No taxes should be paid. We shouldn't be paying more taxes. Number 2, we should remember we are a great city, and if you go to any other town here in the Central Coast, there's people paying parking everywhere they go. And that is a chunk of money. And if you have been in any of those towns and you see them running back to the parking meter because they can't remember if they paid an hour, 2 hours, or a half hour. And then little meter maid lady or meter man is writing up a ticket. So going to Pizzo means you get a ticket. When you come to Solvang, you don't get a ticket. You come here and it's a pleasure to be here. And we should always remember that. And if we can keep that, there's no problem with doing an occupancy or a TOT increase of maybe 1%. We're still under the 14. Just my idea, but I think we should remember what we have here. That's it.
Thank you, Kim. I don't see anybody else here in-house, so we'll take it out to anybody on Zoom or on a phone wishing to speak on this item. Seeing none, we'll bring it back for final comments and direction.
I'll start.
Go ahead.
I don't like raising sales tax. If anything, I'd rather see the TOT go to 14%. Either way, they're both going to have to go to voters. I mean, ideally, it's like, I don't even know how we got to this point, but it's like, well, gosh, we just raised the 0.5% sales tax and raised the TOT 2%. There's your 1.5 million, but it's like, nah, forget it. I'd rather see the TOT get raised to 14% than raising the sales tax. I don't think the voters are going to go for it. But if I have no problem letting the voters decide, if you want to take it to the voters, I'm okay with that.
Would that still be part of what the questioning would be for the consultant?
That is, today's recommendation is to, yes, explore and do a poll for both sales tax and transient occupancy tax increases. That way you will know how the voters feel and which one might be more successful.
And how are they?
We need to pay somebody to figure that out?
Yeah. How are they gonna
That's
engage
priceless.
that? Is it another survey type thing?
No, it would be a poll, so the difference between a survey and a poll, survey is self-voluntary, it can be skewed. A poll is actually done by people who do statistical work on social issues. And so they would actually learn from the data of Solvang, the makeup of Solvang, make sure that they get an even, equal spread amongst all sorts of diversified factors of the population to get that sample of what the general voter might feel like. And that's what helps when the measure is drafted in order to get it to a point that might be supported by the voters.
And this is not strictly a legal input, but having gone through this process recently in another city, The pollsters, the people who put the polling questions together, are very almost surgical in the way that they form the questions to determine what the primary interests are of the people that are responding to it. So for example, they can ask a question, would you support a sales tax increase to fund police services, to fund infrastructure, to fund police and infrastructure, to fund police infrastructure and senior services? And so you start to see these trends as to what's going to be most successful. And then when you have that information, you go, okay, what was the one that was the most successful here? What are the people looking for in this situation? So then you form the question on your ballot measure. You're not setting it as a special tax necessarily, but you're saying, in order to fund infrastructure projects, including but not limited to, and then you include language to that effect, if that's what's supported in the polling. So it's much more scientific than it sounds at the outset, and having been through the process, I was really impressed at how they were able to drill down into the people that they were calling and find out where they were standing.
Was it successful?
It was.
Thank you.
Excellent.
So we don't need a motion, just a little bit of
No.
direction?
Actually, if you would take a motion to authorize me to engage a consultant to conduct a poll, that would be great.
All right.
Yeah.
Do we have a,
I'd make a motion to conduct a survey, or just take the steps forward to conduct the survey for the poll.
Second.
roll call, please?
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Infante,
Yes.
Councilmember Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Mayor Yurick.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
I have to tell you though, I did like Kim's comment. We don't charge for parking. We charge them more for TOT.
Take a spot up there.
That's great.
Thank you, guys.
You see on page 88 that there's a fund revenue for California cities. The city of Solvang doesn't have BLT. I would love to be able to solve this problem just selling sandwiches. Yeah, we don't have BLT. That's what we need to do, sell sandwiches.
They have a different type, it's a Danish BLT in the Solvang restaurant.
Business license. Ah.
Yeah, there are some cities that do their business license tax as a tax. It's a fundraising measure and they will base it on gross receipts. There are others that's a business certificate where it's used for regulatory just to find out who is doing business within the community. If you do it as a tax, subject to the same restrictions.
We're having too much fun up here. Something's wrong. I think I better, we don't have any reports, so I'm gonna adjourn the meeting at 8:29.
This is about sandwiches.